Hey guys, welcome back to the WODdoc Project365, episode 37. Yesterday, we went over the smash and stretch for the forearm here. And we talked about the possibility or the faults that you might see in a burpee that would cause the forearm to bark. But we didn't get into them because we promised that we'd do it today. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to break down the burpee into two things. The grinding pattern in the burpee, which is basically the push-up, and then we'll allow ourselves to go into the dynamic portion of it, which is basically a dynamic push-up. Basically what a burpee is, a jumping activity that falls into a push-up itself. So to begin with, I'm just going to be able to up here so that you could see my shoulder itself. The number one or the primary fault that I see in two categories of people, either the beginner just starting to do push-ups or the very fatigued athlete that's doing push-ups. What I see is the athlete will allow their elbow to wing out. Two things happen here. Both are dangerous. When the elbow wings out, the first thing that you're going to notice is now my elbow just went past the outside of my arm. That's what causes that overload stress on the outside of that forearm, and after a while it causes it to bark a bit. Also, what you'll notice is that my shoulder just dipped down. It just anteriorly dumped, as we like to call it. Both of these situations are bad. We're going to talk about the forearm one today, but it's important to note this one as well. So here's what we do to correct that. The cue that we try to correct that is we're trying to create an external torsion the same way we would when we start to do any type of cleaning or overhead movement when we're trying to get the external rotation of the shoulder. So we're on the push-up. What we're going to try to do is rotate our hand out. Obviously, we're on the ground. So we're creating an external torsion. What that does, it sucks my elbow back and it excites or turns on my posterior cuff. Now what you're going to see is my shoulder is up nice and high. That's the number one great thing about this. The second thing that you're going to see is that my forearm is now much more vertical even as I go through the bottom and top of the push-up. So let's bring this down onto the ground. We start in our regular push-up position. I'm going to get my elbows coming in, turning on those posterior cuffs, allowing myself to come down. The movement starts from my shoulder and then goes to my elbow, proximal to distal. So I come here, down, no shoulder dump. That's bad. Excessive strain on the outside of the arm. Suck in, drive up. One more time. External rotation. That was a good one compared to that anterior shoulder dump. Prescription number one. We're going to spend 2 to 5 minutes focusing on that external rotation cue, turning on the back of the shoulder, not allowing that anterior dump, and that way we don't allow that excessive stress onto the outside of the forearm. Now, once we bring it to a dynamic situation, if we're to look at a burpee, we start in a standing position, pretend I just jumped. When I come back down, obviously I can't jump and get this external rotation, but what I'm thinking is, I'm thinking elbows in. So I come down, and my elbows are in tight, and I can come right back up to my burpee position. So I come down, my elbows are in tight, I still have that activation of the posterior cuff, my arm is still more vertical than it would be if I dumped out to here. Boom, elbows in tight, brings myself back up. Your prescription number two is to now bring the mechanics that we did in the grinding situation in the push-up and bring it over to the dynamic situation of the burpee. Spend about another 2 to 5 minutes doing that. All in total, we're going to spend 10 minutes. 5 minutes on the push-up, 5 minutes on the dynamic landing situation, not necessarily the burpee, just landing, elbows in, protect the shoulder, reduce the stress on the outside of the arm. Until tomorrow, we're optimizing function to optimize performance.